Well, we're going to be talking about Cleve Baxter. Cleve Baxter was the first guy in the 60s to plug a plant into a polygraph, a lie detector, and find out that they could answer his questions. What? Well, you heard it right. He was the first guy to plug a plant into a polygraph and find out that they could answer his questions. And he was the founder of the polygraph unit in the FBI back in the 60s. For instance, there was a specific guy that threw cigar ashes on a specific plant, on which Baxter tested with the polygraph and found out that the plant showed feedback and results when he asked if the guy who threw the ashes was that specific guy. Incredible. Now the Mythbusters try to debunk this and crack this myth. And I read some comments on it and I found it mysterious that they did not use a polygraph, and instead they used an EEG. Some people even commented that EEGs don't measure the same thing as a polygraph does. So Mythbusters busted. Probably Cleve was right all along and plants do have feelings. Here's 2 videos on Cleve Baxter on his research and 1 interview on his research. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and see you again.
After 5 decades of obscurity, the legacy of Jagadish Chandra Bose is now revived in San Diego, California.
Welcome to the Baxter School of Lie Detection. I'm Cleve Baxter, and during the next 6 weeks here in San Diego, you're going to be involved in a very intensified instructional course in the use of the polygraph, or so-called lie detector.
In the course of a career dedicated to the investigation for federal and municipal law enforcement agencies, Cleve Baxter has earned a reputation as the world's foremost authority on the polygraph.
Well, as of February 2nd, 1966, I'd been in the polygraph field full-time for 18 years. And this particular morning, I'd been working all night in the laboratory and had decided to water a plant in the lab, very similar to the plant here, Justina cane plant. My thought was that as the moisture arrived to the leaf of the plant, the plant should be a better conductor, and I should get a reading on the chart. Well, strangely enough, I didn't get this at all, and in fact, it did just the opposite. Instead of the tracing edging upward as it should have on the chart, it went into sort of a wild excitation, very similar to the first part of a human taking a polygraph test. But then it occurred to me, just about 14 minutes along, what would be the real optimum threat to the well-being of a plant. In fact, the imagery of fire entered my mind, and I not only thought, but I fully intended to burn the very leaf that was being tested with a match. Now, I had no matches in the room at the time, and I don't smoke, and I had to go next door to my secretary's area to get a match. But the interesting thing is that right at the split second that imagery of fire entered my mind, the tracing reflecting the changes in the plant just went right off the top of the page. And the only thing that occurred at that time, no lighting of a match, nothing else, merely the imagery of fire. And I must say that as of 14 minutes along in that initial observation on the morning of February 2nd, 1966, my life just hasn't been the same.
Responding to the initial experience, when a plant apparently read his mind, Baxter works nights on his own in his small laboratory. His goal is to perfect an experiment that will satisfy the rigid criteria of the scientific establishment. Baxter hopes to show that plants react to any termination of life in their immediate environment. During the next 6 hours, at some undetermined moment chosen by a randomizer, these brine shrimp will fall to their deaths in boiling water. By totally automating his equipment, Baxter is determined to eliminate human influence. In another room, completely separate from his laboratory, Baxter has placed a philodendron plant, a polygraph, and a videotape recorder. Carefully, he places a leaf between a pair of electrodes that will monitor the electrical activity of the plant. As he has done during countless police interrogations, Baxter establishes a baseline on his polygraph to get an accurate recording of the reaction of his subjects. The video recorder will tape the details of the experiment in Baxter's absence.
For the automation of this experiment to be successful, I have to get a certain distance away from my lab so that my consciousness won't affect the results. I hadn't previously experienced any direct or indirect exposure to mystical philosophies. My contacts had been well within the establishment, particularly federal government agencies and law enforcement. Before working with plants, I hadn't really thought much about the idea of greater consciousness or awareness. Now I look around, but what I see has a different meaning.
The California dawn often finds Cleve Baxter still at work in a small room behind his laboratory. The results of each night's work must be carefully analyzed and recorded. In spite of his high percentage of successful results, only a few daring individuals from the scientific establishment have come forward with offers to replicate his experiments or test his results. The great majority are content simply to condemn his efforts without taking the trouble to investigate their validity.
A few brine shrimp die and a plant feels their death. I think it's the smallness of the event that makes it so significant. It means that even on the lower levels of life, there's a profound consciousness or an awareness that binds all things together.
Is it coincidence that the plant will grow its petals into an exact replica of a female bee?
And all that. I guess because the child was once part of the mother's body, so it would be somewhat like taking cell samples from the body?
Yeah, there should certainly be an affinity there, because if you want to go on a DNA basis, certainly that would be a connection. But I think that the closeness, I just don't, in other words, I think that the cells of our body can pick up on this stuff right now,
Yeah.
you know, with somebody that we're close to, but we don't know how to integrate it into our consciousness.
Oh, okay.
So it's like dowsing. If you put a dowsing rod in a vise, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Put it in the hands, it's the cells of the hands that are doing it. But they're picking that communication up. It's a good example of cellular communication. Yeah. And it's demonstrating the fact that the cells know this, and yet you're not doing it mentally. So somehow I think people that are good at psychic phenomena are able to integrate that capability of using these sensors and bringing it to a conscious level.
I mean, are you saying my cells might react when you're in trouble?
Well, it depends on what our relationship was, whether you thought of me any more often than when you sold a tape or something.
Have you tested that? All right. Have you tested that at all?
Not between you and I. But
no, but I mean between different people
they don't have to
that
be,
are not related.
They don't have to be related. A man and a wife that are very close could do that. And it's very interesting that the plants, if it's going right down to the plant level, it doesn't have all the alternate excuses for these things happening. A plant can have a very brief encounter with a human being, and if it has nobody else that it's attached to, it will lock in on that person. Wherever that person goes, the plant will be attuned to it, even if it's a long distance away. The person that cares for a plant. And this was a problem because people that were trying to replicate my initial work would use plants that they kept in the lab, or they would wipe them down with sterile water or distilled water. And here they're getting attunement to that plant. And even though they try to automate the experiment and leave, the plants are much more attuned to them than they are the subtlety of brine shrimp dropping in simmering water.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So, there's loads of problems on there replicating it. In order to orient the scientific community to be able to properly replicate that experiment, you need to believe in reincarnation. I mean, you have to try to teach them. They would think automation is to go to the other side of the wall and look at it on closed circuit TV. And yet they miss the point that consciously these barriers don't count at all.
So you have certainly proven the old cliche that the attitude of the experimenter definitely influences the experiment.
Well, I would hate to say that I've proven anything, but I've given strong data for others to consider. Certainly, I think that the intent of the experimenter can very much contaminate an experiment. And this is scary in biology because the biologists aren't, they're not automating the experiment. I mean, their intention, what they may hope that will happen, could very much be affecting.
They start with a thesis.
Well, unfortunately, some scientists work backward in scientific method. They go from the result and then go back and look for the sample that will support the result. They're already convinced of. And I don't have much respect for that kind of thing.
There was the research with vitamin C, right? That it's great for you. It doesn't do you any good. Back and forth.
I think that you can, depends on who has an axe to grind,
Wow. Okay. Back a little bit to the feeling again. Fear would be a very powerful feeling. What about joy? That would not have much of an effect then? Like a spontaneous joy, right?
I think so. I think we have gotten some things from that, but I'm not sure it's as dependable, let's say. Because of joy and how it's manifested, happiness turning into joy and laughter, where you draw the line. So the thing that we've done in trying to show the concept from a scientific standpoint is to try to pick the winner, the one that does it the best. And it's led us to the negative things more.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is James, the Impossible channel, and we're going to be talking about Cleve Baxter. Cleve Baxter was the first guy in the 60s to plug a plant into a polygraph, a lie detector, and find out that they could answer his questions. What? Well, you heard it right. He was the first guy to plug a plant into a polygraph and find out that they could answer his questions. And he was the founder of the polygraph unit in the FBI back in the 60s. For instance, there was a specific guy that threw cigar ashes on a specific plant, on which Baxter tested with the polygraph and found out that the plant showed feedback and results when he asked if the guy who threw the ashes was that specific guy. Incredible. Now the Mythbusters tried to debunk this and crack this myth. And I read some comments on it, and I found it mysterious that they did not use a polygraph, and instead they used an EEG. Some people even commented that EEGs don't measure the same thing as a polygraph does. So Mythbusters busted. Probably Cleve was right all along, and plants do have feelings. Here's 2 videos on Cleve Baxter, on his research, and 1 interview on his research. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and see you again.
After 5 decades of obscurity, the legacy of Jagadish Chandra Bose is now revived in San Diego, California.
Welcome to the Baxter School of Lie Detection. I'm Cleve Baxter, and during the next 6 weeks here,